The Golden Goblet by Eloise Jarvis McGraw. Chapter 5. Gebu's joviality lasted for several days, and as was usual during these periods, Ranifer fared better as to his food. His stomach ceased gnawing, but his anxieties did not. He was able to show fair patience for the first day or so of waiting for the grains of gold to accumulate in Ibni's next wineskin. But after that, though he told himself it was still too early, he could not help expecting every moment to see Hecate's signal that Rek had been told, and all was well. At last, on the fourth morning, close to midday, he noticed Hecate standing close beside Rek's work table, ostensibly watching the goldsmith raise a bowl, but actually whispering to him under cover of the hammer taps. Ranifer turned away quickly, terrified that someone else would notice. He need not have worried. Anxiety caused him to make so many blunders the rest of the day that the whole shop's attention was irritably focused on himself. When he reached the gold house next morning, he glanced instantly toward the big washing vats. Ibni was there, the same as every other day, unconcernedly dumping a sack of raw gold into the vat. For a moment, Ranifer could not believe it. Surely, once Rek knew, he would turn Ibni out of the shop forever. Surely it was Ibni who was doing the thieving. Perhaps Rek did not know yet. Perhaps Hecate had been telling him something else yesterday. Or, Horrid thought, perhaps Rek had not believed him. All day Ranifer went about his duties mechanically, forcing himself to abide by his own decision that he and Hecate should not be seen in conversation. At last, in the late afternoon, he could bear it no longer. He watched his chance and stooped close beside Hecate on the pretext of helping him stoke an oven. "Have you told him yet?" "Aye, yesterday." "I thought so. Why does he not do something then?" "I do not know. Perhaps he cannot find the wineskin." "Did he believe you?" "I am sure he did." "You did not mention my name?" "You know I would not." There was nothing to do but go on waiting that day, and the next, and the next. 8 days gone already, Ranifer thought as he walked homeward one evening. Yet nothing has changed at all. There must be much gold in that wineskin by now. In another day or two, Ibni will be waiting for me again, handing me the filthy thing, and I shall have to take away that proof too. And then we must start all over and wait and wait and wait some more. I cannot do it. I cannot. I'll run away first. I'll slip away to the docks at night. That's what I'll do, and hide on a Nile boat and go wherever it takes me. Aye, but then what would I do, and how would I live? Suppose the boat was sailing south, straight into Cush, where men are barbarians and the gods are not true gods, and people speak gibberish instead of talking sensibly as Egyptians do. Suppose a sharp collision with a puffing fat man brought Ranifer up short. Next instant, he was knocked off balance again by a group of urchins scrambling past him to be shoved aside in their turn by workers dashing off the ferry boats they had just boarded and into the road. Blinking, Ranifer stared about him. Something was happening. People were shouting, gesturing to each other, beginning to run all in the same direction, southward toward the palace. Confused and jostled, Ranifer was swept along by the crowd, trying in vain to catch a glimpse of the palace walls over a sea of bobbing heads. At the sound of drums up ahead and the squeal of trumpets, his curiosity drove even his anxieties from his mind. He was trying to force his way around a stubbornly motionless donkey when a hand caught his arm. "Don't hurry, young one. You don't want to see it." "See what? What is it?" As the crowd streamed past, Ranifer tried impatiently to free his arm, but the donkey's owner held it fast. Turning, Ranifer saw that it was the old man he had met in the papyrus marsh. "It's an execution, young one. Aye, turn back. You'll see enough killing before you're as old as I." Ranifer squinted again toward the palace walls, partially visible beyond the palm-fringed garden of a nobleman's villa. The drums were pounding louder, as if to drown out a faint but spine-chilling screaming. The small, struggling figure of a man was being hoisted by one roped foot up the palace wall to be fastened halfway to the top and left dangling head downward. Another followed. "Who are they, ancient?" Ranifer asked. "What have they done?" "They are tomb robbers, young one. They broke into the places of silence. They stole away the dead pharaoh's treasures and sold them in the marketplace. Aye, they deserve what they get, but you don't need to watch it. Tomb robbers." Shivering, Ranifer stared at the distant copper-brown figures writhing against the white wall. Because of these wicked ones and their thievery, the Ba of some long-dead pharaoh was now starving and destitute in the land of the west, stripped of the magical protection of his jeweled amulets, robbed of the food and gold and furniture and weapons placed in his tomb to sustain him in luxury for his 3,000 years of paradise. If the wicked ones had harmed his mummy, then even his Ba was dead, for a man's soul could not live if his former body were destroyed. Murder of the soul was a terrible, unnatural crime, hideous to think about. His flesh crawling, Ranifer hastily turned his back, pulling away from the ancient. "You are right. I don't want to see it. Let me go, old one. You have wisdom as well as youth, a most unusual combination." The old man released him, chuckling, and Ranifer started back along the street. Such cheerfulness grated on him today. The ancient followed, however, giving a tug on his donkey's lead rope. "Come along, my little lotus. Quicken your hoofbeats. It is not every day we may walk with a young one so young and wise. Though, indeed, I believe he is trying to run away from us." "Nay, I am not." Ranifer slowed his pace, ashamed of his surliness. To make amends, he patted the donkey's coarse-haired, fuzzy head. "I see you have sold your papyrus," he added, nodding toward the empty pack baskets. "Aye, at the sailmakers. They pay little, but it is enough for Lotus and me. Today was a good day. My baskets near burst under the load." The old man cackled happily, digging 6 copper ring coins out of his skimpy sash and exhibiting them to Ranifer. "I shall have cakes with my lentils tonight and sleep sound on my mat." He whirled the rings on his fingertip, then tucked them away, patting his sash complacently. "Where do you live?" Ranifer asked. "Yonder, where the fields of the flower growers end and the desert begins." The ancient pointed a thin finger westward. "The land there is waterless, but free to anyone. I built me a little house out of bricks I made with my own hands. Aye, every brick," he repeated as Ranifer looked at him with sudden interest. "I had no straw to put in them, but they will last my life and my old donkey's. We are happy there, Lotus and I." "And the donkey? Is there pasture for him?" "Not a blade, not a twig, young one, but he has learned to like papyrus." The ancient gave his high-pitched chuckle, his one eye bright as enamel under the dark light of coal painted on the upper lid. "Also, I buy him a handful of grain when I have an extra copper. He does not ask much." Affectionately, he pulled the little beast's ear, then nodded toward a small street they were approaching. "I leave you here. Farewell, young and wise one. May I never see you hanging from the palace walls." Cackling cheerfully, he turned off down the crooked lane, the old donkey plodding behind him. Ranifer watched until the shadow swallowed them, then walked on through the dust-filled streets in which an occasional torch bloomed now over doorway or gate. He is happy, the boy thought. He eats, he sleeps in a house he made himself. He has coppers in his sash. Why could I not go on in the early mornings to the marshes, cut papyrus, and sell it to the sailmakers, then be Rex's apprentice the rest of the day? Holy Mother Mutt, why not? I, too, could live on the edge of the desert near my father's tomb. I could make bricks for a house. I could. He turned a last corner and stopped, his excited daydreams fading. There was the familiar gate, the ugly street, reality. I cannot do all that, he thought. I do not even have a donkey to carry the papyrus, and besides there is Gebu. I must go on waiting. Next morning, there was a stranger in Ibni's place at the vats. To Ranifer, it was as if the sun had come out at last after weeks of gloomy night. The sky was radiant, the air on his cheek miraculously caressing. Even the ovens seemed things of beauty, and every worker in the shop a skilled and witty fellow. He flew about his tasks, buoyant with triumph and overflowing with energy. Rek watched him speed back and forth between shop and courtyard, and finally stopped him, smiling. "You'll not last a day if you keep up this pace. What has got into you? Did you swallow a hive of bees?" "Nay, master, it is nothing." Ranifer did not know what to say. "It is something, but I did not mean to pry. May the gods continue to smile on you, little one, for a change. Now run to Abba the potter's for me, and get the new crucible to replace the faulty one. Also buy 5 measures of natron on your way back. Tomorrow, perhaps, you may make me a few gold leaves for Lady Hatasu's bracelet." Scarcely touching the ground in his rapture, Ranifer sped through the city of the dead to Abba's shop, and from there to the long, low shed in the marketplace, where the dealers in natron and spices and incense sold their wares. He was leaving the marketplace with his nostrils still full of rich fragrances when he saw Ibni the Babylonian emerging from a wine shop just ahead of him. In a panic as sudden as it was unreasoned, Ranifer wheeled into an alley and crouched there, trembling, until the Babylonian was certain to be gone. Even then he dared not venture onto the big streets, but found his way back to the gold house furtively, through the alleys like one hiding from pursuers. Why, he kept asking himself angrily. I have nothing to fear from him. He cannot possibly know it was I who told Rek. Indeed, it was not I who told Rek. For all Ibni knows, no one told Rek at all. He merely discovered it. The rapture was gone from the day, nevertheless. Ibni was here and alive in the city of the dead, whereas Ranifer had somehow been thinking of him as simply gone, like a puff of smoke. Gebu was still here and alive, too, very much so, and the aftermath of Ibni's dismissal was still to come. Ibni would certainly report to Gebu if he had not already done so, and would Gebu ever believe Ranifer had nothing to do with it? He dawdled on the way home, fighting off wave after wave of dread. When he reached the street of the Crooked Dog, he found the gate of Gebu's house open. Torchlight flickered within the courtyard, and there was a mumble of voices. Slowly, on feet that wanted badly to run the other way, Ranifer walked into the courtyard. The voices belonged to Ibni and Gebu. They stood together in the middle of the paved space, and Gebu held a torch. He extended it and squinted through its light at Ranifer, but merely grunted without interest when he saw who it was, and turned back to Ibni. Nay, you have served me well enough, but you're no use to me now. Can you not see that? You must find some other master. Some other? But how will I live? You promised me. I promised you nothing. Come now, be off with you. Gebu started toward the gate, but Ibni clung to his arm and continued his panic-stricken whine. You did indeed. At the wine shop that night when we struck our bargain, you said, I said nothing I remember. Be off. Gebu brushed him away with a careless gesture that nevertheless sent him sprawling and strode on past Ranifer to the gate, where he looked this way and that along the street, holding his torch high. Ask the boy, Ibni cried, apparently catching sight of Ranifer for the first time. Here's the young one. Ask him. He scrambled to his feet and darted over to Ranifer with his most obsequious smile and the hateful hand-rubbing. You'll help, old Ibni, won't you? I'll wager you missed me today and wondered where I was. Well, I've been turned off. I've been accused unfairly of someone else's evil doing. Can I help that? I'm the soul of honor, always have been. I trust people's promises. Tell your honored brother how he promised me a copper a day for life if I would serve him at the gold shop. I know nothing about it, Ranifer muttered. Brushing past the Babylonian in his turn, he walked quickly to the storeroom and went inside. There he stood in the darkness, clinging to the gritty edge of a shelf and breathing fast with joy. He could scarcely believe his luck. Obviously, all was well at last. All was better than he had dared hope. Neither Ibni nor Gebu suspected him of any connection with the affair. Gebu was not in a rage. Incredibly, he did not even seem much interested. How could that be? After all, the rages and beatings concerning those cursed wineskins. Still, thought Ranifer, the last time I brought the wineskin, he did not seem much interested either. He said to Wenneman, It is of small importance now. Why, just then, nothing had changed that day that Ranifer could remember, except that Gebu's mood had suddenly altered as it often did, and food had been more plentiful since. He gave it up. What mattered was that Gebu was not interested. He was waiting for someone, no doubt Wenneman or that Nile boat captain, and his mind was on something else. Ranifer prayed to Ammon that night that it might stay there. Groping along the shelf, he found half a bread loaf and several onions. He ate them quickly while the voices went on outside, then dipped a mug of water and drank deep. A sudden roar of anger brought him to the doorway. Gebu had come to the end of his patience with Ibni's whining. Tie that tongue of yours in a basket and throw it in the Nile, he bellowed. You'll get nothing more from me. Get out and don't come back. He gave the Babylonian a push that sent him careening out the gate into the arms of Wenneman, who was just coming in. Wenneman dropped his unsuspected burden, sidestepped disdainfully, and entered the courtyard. "Ah, there you are," Gebu grunted. Ibni, picking himself up, was shrilling venomously. Very well, very well. We'll see how you fare without me. You'll get no one else to do your bidding at Wreck the Goldsmith's. That boy won't. No use to ask him." Gebu closed the gate in his face. Him and his paltry wineskins, they are far bigger birds in the air than Wreck the Goldsmith. Eh, my friend? He grinned at Wenneman in a slow, sly way that made Ranifer suddenly uneasy, much as he had enjoyed seeing the last of Ibni. Deciding abruptly that what he wished now was the obscurity of his corner, he started for the acacia tree. Gebu's voice stopped him. "You, Ranifer, I'm going out. If any should ask for me, send them to Mutra's wine shop." Gebu turned away, then turned back. "About tomorrow. You're finished at Rex. Come to the stone-cutting shop at first light in the morning. You're apprenticed to me now." Again he turned to go, leaving Ranifer too stunned at first to move or even speak. Gebu was at the gate before he found his voice. "Wait, Gebu, wait." "Well," Gebu grunted, turning. Please. What did you say just now?" "I said come to the stone-cutting shop at first light tomorrow. You will start your apprenticeship." "But you cannot mean that. You cannot mean—" "I mean what I say as always," Gebu said, walking on again. Ranifer rushed after him and caught his sleeve. "Do you mean I cannot go back to Rex? Not ever? Oh, please. Shh. Leave off that yowling." "But please, oh, please do not make me leave Goldsmith working. I do not want to be a stonecutter. Silence. Get out of the way." "But why are you doing this? Why? I have done nothing." Gebu glanced at him impatiently. "Did you not hear the Babylonian? It is all over at the goldsmith. I told you before I must have some use of you." "But I earn Devon at Rex, and I bring them all home." "Wait, listen to me, please. Let me go to the gold house tomorrow. Only tomorrow. Rex will expect me. He does not know. I sent word to him an hour ago. Out of the way now. Come, friend. We are late." Pushing Ranifer aside, Gebu opened the gate and raised his torch for Wenneman to pass through. "Nay, please, please let me go tomorrow. Only one more day. I was to make little golden leaves tomorrow." The gate slammed. The torchlight was cut off by the wall. Ranifer dropped to his knees on the pavement and burst into sobs. Later, when the moon had climbed high over the courtyard wall, Gebu came home again. Ranifer was waiting for him, huddled up in the shadow of the acacia tree. He had rehearsed many times every word he was going to say. Now the time had come. As Gebu bolted the gate behind him and started for the stairs, Ranifer came out of the shadows under the acacia tree and walked across the moonlit pavement toward him. "Eh? Mother of the night, what is that?" Gebu gasped and fell back a few paces, then straightened himself in anger. "It is you, worthless one. Curse you, what do you mean coming upon me like that? I thought you were a cat." "Gebu, I want to talk to you. Please listen." Well, make haste. I'm tired. I want my mat." It is about the apprenticeship." Ranifer stopped to swallow. "You will begin it tomorrow, and that is all I have to say about the apprenticeship. Do not waste your breath arguing." "Nay, I will not. I do not mean to argue. I mean to tell you of a plan I have." "One that will please you," Ranifer added quickly. Gebu grunted skeptically, but waited. "You took me when my father went to the gods," began Ranifer carefully. He swallowed, but forced it out. "Out of the goodness of your heart. I, a gutter waif. If you had not offered me food and lodging, I would be sleeping in the dust of the streets and fighting the dogs for their leavings. Instead, I lived comfortably on your bread, and you found me work to my liking and did not apprentice me to a fishmonger or yourself until now. I am a burden to you, a great burden. You have said so many times, have you not, Gebu?" Ranifer cried, forgetting his speech for a moment in his emotion. "Is it not true, all I have said?" "Go on," Gebu said. Again Ranifer swallowed, a great gulp to give him courage, then poured out the rest in a torrent, for fear he would not get it all out. "Therefore, I wish to take away the burden of myself. I will leave you and not live on your bread or sleep in your courtyard. Instead, I will build myself a little house in the desert out of bricks that I shall make myself, and I will cut papyrus in the marsh and sell it to the sailmakers and buy my own bread and fish, and you will not need to trouble about me ever again any longer. And I can do this, all this, and never again be a burden to you, if only you will buy me a donkey, just one very small donkey to carry the papyrus to the sailmakers. It need not be a young donkey, Just an old one. I can give you coppers for it when I earn them. And he stopped because Gebu was laughing, at first softly in little bursts, then louder, then in great gales, first doubling over and then leaning far back with his chin tipped to the sky until the courtyard rang with it and the neighbor across the wall flung back his lattice and began to curse at the noise. Still laughing, even staggering with the force of his laughter, Gebu moved on toward the stairway and up the steps to his room, leaving Ranifer standing silent in the moonlight. When the door of the upstairs room had creaked shut on its leather hinges and the laughter had at last died away, Ranifer turned and walked slowly back to the acacia tree. This plan had not succeeded. He had not really, in his heart, ever thought it would.